I work in the editorial world, and for me to be like confident and happy and like genuinely fulfilled and grateful for my life, and then have girls who I work, or women who I work alongside who are starving themselves in order to attain something and are miserable, but how come I weigh 100 pounds more than them, but I'm so happy? It's like, a head trip.
I've always been inspired by drag culture. They helped me recognize that I was an exaggeration of a woman, so I kind of knew how to lead my life.
I honestly didn't know about body image until I got into business. And when I got into business, for me, I'm a girl from Philly. All Philly girls are the same. Feisty with a fat ass. And then as I started getting into fashion, the fashion world started liking me. And I started having to get samples. I started thinking about, what does my face look like in a picture? What do I look like when I film? What does this dress look like in a picture? And that becomes obsessive.
When I was younger, I was like, oh, I definitely want boobs. I definitely want those. Yeah. And then I got them. I got a lot of them. I had very well. I have for years. Then being in the fashion world, it was cool. Now I can't wear clothes I want because the size of my boobs. It makes me feel really uncomfortable, and I think it's probably because of attention, maybe from men. But that could go way deep.
I had an idea of what the perfect breasts look like, and mine didn't look that way, and still don't.
Were they big or small?
It wasn't about the size. It was about how big your nipple is and where the nipple is on your breast.
Okay. Yes. It really is though.
How perky they are.
My idea of perfect breasts were always erect nipples, but you don't always have erect nipples. And I remember being very self-conscious about that.
I wasn't aware really of body image until my career started also. And for ballet, it was different. It wasn't an image thing like bigger boobs or face or butt. It was what can you do?
I don't like the fact that I don't have boobs. I'm actually very thankful I don't, because I'm very masculine spirited, but I kind of always teased about that when I was growing up, and it got so annoying.
I never cared about my body when I was with women, but when I was with men, I was like, oh God, I have to go to the gym, I have to eat right. But then when I'm with girls, I'm like, I'm the shit. I grew up in a Dominican household. My dad's Ecuadorian, and I didn't grow up with him, and their body type is totally different from Dominican. So maybe if I had grown up with his influence, I would have been more appreciative of my body. But my women around me were so voluptuous. They were just packed on every level with double D's, big butts, small waist. And I knew that it was all this body image stuff because, with girls I didn't have to worry about anything. And then with guys I had to worry about everything. It's is your hair long? Is it pressed? Is it this?
Can
is
I
it
ask
that?
a question? Was it something that came from you or them?
It was everywhere.
Okay.
It was my mom was always telling me your hair is your only asset. Then if I wore a skirt, it was my hips were too big. I wasn't allowed to wear mini skirts because I looked like a slut. Then if I was going to school, the uniform, then it was guys were always trying to whistle and really making me feel uncomfortable. As a little girl, 13, 14, they're you're in a school uniform, you look like they're every dream, and you're just oh my God, I can't deal with it. And
I got that too. Everybody, when I was in middle school, and I started to get a booty and started to be starting to look very, very feminine, I was automatically a slut, I was a whore. I've always been around different body types. And then there's, San Francisco drag world, and people are putting pads on them or cinching their waist. I'm a very feminine looking person, and I do exude sexuality, but I've never been taught that that was wrong.
I've definitely struggled with my weight my whole life, and had a really complicated relationship with my weight, because on one hand, I felt okay with my body, and I was really strong and athletic and very active, and I still am. And so I've never felt there was something inherently wrong with my body. But I was, I grew up in LA too, and it really is image consciousness capital of the world. And moreover, I grew up in Beverly Hills, so it was also plastic surgery capital of the world. And so I think my feelings of complicatedness with my body were more imposed on me. My parents would be like, oh, well, you're so smart and you're so pretty, but you're never going to have a boyfriend. You're never going to get married if you're not thinner. And in the back of my head, I'm like, well, good, because I'm fucking gay. But like,
I struggle with my booty. Since I'm 15, and it started when I was 15. Like, I have had this. There's another part that lives in my head. There's the ass that lives in my head as well. So I've gone to trainers. I've done squats. I've done it all. No surgery, like nothing like that. But it's not been to where I've wanted it to be. Not bigger, just it's toned.
Every day I dress around my body type. Everything in my closet goes for my body type. I wouldn't buy, a shift dress because that just would not work for me. I would look like a tent. I know what I look like. I know what looks good on me, and I'm aware that I'm a bigger girl.
These are plus size jeans, but they're like a size 20, but they fit perfectly. They ride exactly where I want on my hips, and I'm like, I can do that. But there was a big period where I was like, fuck, like if I'm like hooking up with somebody and they look at my jeans and they're like size 20, they're gonna think I'm crazy. And I'm like, yo, oh my God, how do I deal with this? This isn't fair. Like,
I always factor in if I can eat. And that's horrible, but I'm gonna tell you something. I remember one time I went to an award show and I thought I was gonna pass the fuck out. I literally had to go to the bathroom to take it down, to breathe, because it was so tight, but my stylist sold me on it. Like, I was young and he was just like, girl, I'm telling you, if you wear this is amazing. You're gonna win. I'm gonna call it. Like, it was just, and I was like, all right. And I was dying.
I don't know, I find like the rules about dressing for your body type to be very oppressive. And even if like I'm not supposed to wear a shift dress or sleeveless or like fucking harem pants, I don't care. Like, if that's what makes me happy, that's what I'm gonna wear.
I've worked as a model since I was 14, and I'm 30 now, so I've been doing it for a really long time. I basically was going out with a guy who had just graduated from film school. We got in the habit of just filming our lives, and like I saw America's Next Top Model come out, and I was like, that has nothing to do with the reality of working in the business.
I know.
And maybe this is actually, maybe people would be interested in this. Maybe I can do something with this. So we started giving cameras to friends of mine who were models and asked them to keep video diaries. And it gave me this platform to talk about my experience and try to do something. I have been lucky enough to be able to have meetings with Vogue and the CFDA, and after we met with Vogue, we announced this health initiative, which is a really significant step. They haven't been hiring models under 16. It's the first time a magazine has done anything like that. All these girls, they come to me, whether it's after a screening or at one of our events, and sometimes they get really emotional and they talk about these extreme measures they've taken to achieve this cookie cutter standard, which is, maybe it's not really possible for anyone. But
it's not like, cookie cutter. It's like, it's beyond that.
Yeah. I sat down with my friend Amy Lemons, and when she started modeling when she was 12, and when she was, I think, 14, she was on the cover of Italian Vogue, shot by Steven Meisel. And then when she was 17 and she started to fill out and get hips and breasts, her agent was like, you really need to stop eating, and you need to eat one rice cake a day, and if that doesn't work, you should only eat half a rice cake. She was like, okay, well, they're basically telling me to be anorexic. And this is actually something that was news to me. I mean, because I have always been naturally thin. I have never had to think about what I eat.
Some people do naturally have very thin bodies, like Sarah saying, like, this is just her body. It's not something she's like actively trying to do. Yeah. And then like going, again, it's like that real women rhetoric. It's really, really dangerous because it's reinforcing the idea. Maybe it's not saying like the thin ideal, but it's reinforcing an ideal of saying this is the only valid way to be a woman.
When I was younger, I would binge eat, and then if I knew that I would, like, when I was, like, stressed out or, like, whatever, and then if I, like, was binge eating the day before, then I just wouldn't eat for 2 days, but it wasn't necessarily, like, me trying to lose weight. It was just, like, a more, like, psychological, like, weird thing.
Control issues.
Yeah, control issues, I guess. But my mother, she was a model, and she was bulimic and anorexic, and, like, And I've seen her struggle with that so much.
Personally, I never had a problem with it.
I wanted to hear some sad
What's your
story.
story? I mean, I was asked to gain weight when I got in the company.
I was told to gain weight too.
And I was like, this is crazy. Like, you know, because on the one hand, when you're young, you know, and you're having your work tell you have to do something, and you're like, well, this is just how I am. You know, you seek the advice and counsel of your peers, and so that was hard for me, you know, because I can't go into a room full of girls who are ballet dancers, most of them dieting, and be like, they asked me to gain weight, you know, like they're like begging you.
Just, you know, like, can you lose like 5 pounds before the shoot on whatever, or you need to tone up if you want to get the campaign.
Yeah,
So
I've heard that. That's like a big thing is toning up. It's not necessarily
like
lose
toning-
weight, it's tone up.
It's toning up, but
Yeah.
but it's like, no, I'm just like, no.
The first time I was in a structured like diet program, I was 7 years old, and it was at Cedars-Sinai Hospital, and it was like a kids diet program, and it was like very regimented, and that was a constant theme until I left LA and moved here. When I was 15 or 16 years old, I was in another program that was like a very calorie restricted diet where I was doing like 500 calories a day. Did I lose weight? Yeah, but I was depressed out of my mind.
That's not right.
No, and also like for a 15-year-old, it was like very confusing for me because I'm being told like, oh, you're so unhealthy because you're fat. And meanwhile, I'm like being forced into even more unhealthy habits by like starving myself and still doing like high strenuous physical activity. I grew up in a bubble. To leave that and then find my own community and like also like a queer community has completely transformed my attitude towards like body and myself. Completely.
Men get intimidated. I'm 6 feet tall. I'll get called fat all the time by people. Not all the time, but like more so than I guess an average shaped girl. And, you know, and it's funny because a lot of times by the end of the night, they're like trying to buy me a drink. Or I remember in high school, I would have the same guys that would make fun of me and be mean to me showing up at my doorstep, asking my mom permission to take me out. You know what I mean? And it's just because they're insecure. They think that they're not supposed to, you know, be comfortable with a dominant woman.
Most of the beautiful females that I have relationships with were all straight. And I think that was something that was weird for me because I saw them struggle with their image. Now that our society is so interconnected with media, you know, it's so much more fragile, and it gets in the way. It does get in the way of intimacy and image.
I don't feel open. I don't want like lights on or anything like that. Like I just want to be covered, and I don't know. I just you know, I mean, if obviously, you know, done being open and naked and whatever, but until I know the person really well, it's really uncomfortable for me.
This is gonna seem like a total non sequitur, but I remember one of the last classes I took in college was on the Arab Spring and Middle Eastern politics. And I remember reading about this idea of sort of a dominant narrative when I was looking at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and that the Palestinians didn't feel that they had a narrative. You can kind of apply that idea to the fashion industry and to an image-based culture where, you know, in the past you just had Vogue and Harper's Bazaar, and everyone was looking at the same 10 magazines, and those images and those magazines and those editors were extremely powerful. Because there wasn't that much choice. And now obviously we have the internet and we have a zillion blogs and so many voices. And so I think there isn't the same dominant narrative. There isn't the same dominant body type or body
You can't
image.
censor it anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, and I
It's
guess the
definitely-
only place where that still exists is on the runway because of the sample size.
Right.
And that's where people need to, men particularly, I feel like, need to get more in touch with the fact that you're trying to reach a consumer. That consumer is not a stick. So please don't make stick clothing. Like, don't draw stick figures when you want to represent real people.
Well, I had a stylist that literally said to me, because I couldn't fit into a sample, she was like, oh, I have these great laxatives.
Oh,
I'm gonna throw up right now.
I remember attending this CFDA talk, Council of Fashion Designers of America talk on, resizing the sample size. Should we resize the sample size? Maybe now it's a 0. Should it be a 4? Should it be a 6? Whatever. And I think that the sample size for a long time has been dictated by the extreme youth of the girls. So if the average girl on the runway is like 14, 15, you're selling an adolescent ideal of femininity to women. And so if you say, only adult models should be modeling clothing that's marketed to adults, then inevitably you're going to have a more womanly body type on the runway.
it's changing. The one-dimensional thing is totally changing. Models are now becoming personalities, which people are booking them for. People are,
Personality
having crazy tattoos. The hair thing. Now people are getting jobs
More
because of
recognition, right? For their
who they are
characters.
and their character. And I think that's a pretty big move in fashion.
I think that there's something to be said for like being an individual and being a novelty because you're an individual. And even if like I'm as talented as a writer as I am, I'm being hypothetical, I'm not applauding myself, I would not have a career in fashion if I was thin. I wouldn't. I objectively would not be involved in the fashion industry.
I feel you for that, too.
I would be dime a dozen. There are very, very few spaces, especially in the magazine world and especially in the fashion world, where people are talking about body image in a positive and empowering way and saying, like, it's okay that you feel this way about your legs or your arms. You can still have fun with fashion and you can still use fashion to your advantage instead of saying, like, no, in order to participate in fashion, you need to change yourself.
I always had like a fuck you attitude, and I definitely got that from my mom. If someone ever said anything wrong with me, I would either say, I'm really sorry that you feel that way, or you're just jealous or something.
You may think that you're not getting these opportunities because you look different than that, but you'll get more opportunities because you look different than that.
Yeah.
Because people want individuality, people want uniqueness, and yes, a fad is a fad, and people travel together in packs, and these things happen, and it becomes this thing. But at the same time, that one individual always stands out.
That's true.
Always.